I guess I don't have anything else to share now, so thank you very much. If I could just get the password inputted back there, that'd be great. Appreciate that. We're going to keep this light, fun, and interesting. I'm going to ask some questions along the way. There's a mini quiz, but there's really no wrong answer. How many of you is your first time to CreativeZen? Yes. How many of you guys have been to Creative Mornings before? Awesome. How many of you have had CreativeZen or Creative Mornings change your life? Yeah, I know you did. Awesome. I'd love to hear it, and I'm glad to share a little bit more about that and give you guys some context as to why we're here, why I'm doing this. But before we get there, I want to bring you guys back to the beginning with my parents, who somehow, back in the 70s, with my mother living in Kendall and my father living in North Miami, met without cell phone, internet, GPS, or any of that stuff. It was crazy. They met through something called the Landmark Education. Anybody familiar with Landmark Forum? Kind of predated gratitude training and The Secret. They met through something called S Training, and they were involved with the founder and Warner Earhart, and really took it, obviously impacted their life to the point that they were leading seminars and organizing, and it was a lot of volunteering. And I feel like that's worth mentioning because that is part of my DNA and part of my genes, and literally contributed to me coming to become an altruistic community builder. Another thing that's worth mentioning that I don't get to talk about that often except for in this setting is my father, God bless him, grew up in New Hyde Park, Nassau County, Long Island, playing the game of lacrosse. Played at NJCCC up in Saranac Lake and helped contribute to advocating for the game to come down here to South Florida and become FHSAA sport. I started playing in 5th grade, and it used to be a club program. We used to play only against the private schools, St. Andrews, Pinecrest. It was my father, his dear friend, my godfather, Jerry Krause, and a lot of passionate volunteers that advocated for many, many years, going to school board meetings and conferences and so many other things, that the year after I graduated high school, the game of lacrosse became an FHSAA sport. And you think about it now, it's in the public schools, it's everywhere. And yeah. He doesn't like to talk about it, but it earned him a spot in the U.S. Lacrosse Hall of Fame Florida chapter, and I'd like to think that those genes and that advocacy definitely paved the way for my future advocacy. So I'm forever grateful for instilling that within me, and I felt that that was important and worth sharing with you guys, and they are in the back if you want to give them a hug and thank them later. So we'll fast forward. Fortunately, somehow, they made the decision to move to Broward County in Coral Springs in the mid-'80s and built the house that I was born and raised in, that they still live in. And Coral Springs, obviously great, suburban community, very safe, great schools, good parks, and all that good stuff. So fast forward, and I'm gonna keep it real with you guys and be transparent, as most of you guys know that I am. I was a great baby. I gave my parents a lot of joy. I was a great, first grader, second grader, third grader, and then, 4th grade came around and I started getting in trouble. I started speaking up, and I started, having to get picked up from the principal's office. And in 5th grade, I know my mother doesn't want to remember this, but I wasn't able to go on the class trip to Washington, D.C. But as we come to find out, the school system really wasn't for me. Fortunately, though, I will mention, and I feel it's worth mentioning, I went to school at Forest Glen Middle School in Coral Springs. While Coral Springs is a relatively white suburban community, fortunately, they bussed in a ton of kids from Pompano, and they had a lot of people from the Caribbean that lived in this community. So I got to grow up with a lot of Colombians, Dominicans, Haitians, Jamaicans, and people from all different backgrounds and walks of life, which I feel contributed to me not looking at color and being colorblind and accepting people from all backgrounds and all walks of life, which is obviously very pivotal in today's day and age. So we're going through school, doing my best, but unfortunately spent a lot of time in detention, internal and external suspension. But, when my parents would come and pick me up, the assistant principals would always say, Evan's a great kid. He has all the potential in the world. He just can't figure out how to keep his mouth shut. And I was just saying the things and doing the things that a lot of kids would think and want to say, but they wouldn't want to say them because they wouldn't want to get in trouble. Ended up paving the way for me to speak my mind and say things that are even more important later. So I want to take this moment to apologize to my parents publicly. But obviously thank them for their understanding and unwavering support, which once again contributed to me being the human being that I am today. Because the school system and that path wasn't for me. I was destined for a different path, a bigger path, a brighter path. So fast forward, I did college. All the credits except for 2 math classes, just couldn't wrap my head around things I knew I was never going to use in the supermarket. In all reality. So I am a college dropout. I also, for high school, all the way up to my senior year, last semester, they go, hey, you're going to be 1 credit short and we're not doing summer school. You're going to have to come back for a 5th year of high school. And fortunately, there was a guidance counselor as I was walking out that day that liked me and said, you know what, just go get a GED. You're going to be all right. So it's not something that I'm necessarily proud to say that I'm a high school and college dropout, but obviously I was able to figure out a different path in life. And I share these parts of my childhood with you. How many of you guys have kids? All right. I know it must be challenging. I'm not there yet. Andrew and Francis just had their beautiful first child in the back. You could meet baby Amaya later. But your kids, they might start off on one path, but there are brighter futures ahead, and I really want to remind you guys of that. So once again, thanks, Mom and Dad. So fast forward, I'm going through my 20s. I'm working some sales jobs. I start off with Dish Network, again with AT&T and Verizon, and I realized, retail sales just wasn't for me. Fortunately, I grew up in this, does anybody remember the Chris Moneymaker poker boom with the World Series of Poker back in 2003? And I played poker growing up, and I took a stab at playing poker semi-professionally. And fortunately, through that experience, I got to meet a lot of great people, and some of those people introduced me to a business and industry called recruiting. Does anybody know staffing, headhunting, consulting? We would, place people in jobs. So I learned how to fit a square peg in a round hole. So I'm doing this recruiting thing. I'm, getting some really good experience, working for some pretty good-sized companies and recruiting on behalf of some even bigger companies. And I started listening to TED Talks. And I started listening to them on my lunch break. And I started going to my parents' house and listening to them. And then, fortunately, Nova was hosting TEDx NSU, and I actually got my first experiences to attend TED Talks in person, and we attended annually. It was one of my mother and mine's favorite events for 4 years, right here on the campus. Heard some amazing alumni, students, faculty. I got to be there for Guy Harvey's TED Talk, which as a marine conservationist was very memorable and impactful. So these TED Talks are really starting to have an impact on my life and kind of start giving me some underlying motivation and inspiration. Fortunately, I have a dear friend who took a liking to me and started mentoring me, and there's a recurring theme that we're going to see here that some people fortunately saw things inside of me that I might not have seen in myself. And this friend was just a mutual friend, but he also had an appreciation for TED Talks, motivation and inspiration. He was a retail management executive that was renting space in a co-working space. And he said, there's a mini TED Talk going on in my co-working space. I think you'd like it. And he invited me to come. And I'm super grateful to have him here. Juan invited me to my first Creative Mornings event. And that first event, and I invited him to come, super good guy, Brandon Wells Coffee. Phenomenal story, but if you guys know him, just a little dry and quiet, but super great guy. said, I don't know about this Creative Mornings thing, but I'm gonna give it a second try. Second month was Adam Garfield, founder of Speedy Tab. Does anybody remember? He was the pioneer of ordering food and drinks ahead via an app on your cell phone. This was back in 2014, got acquired by Visa. Super good guy, spoke at CreativeZen. So I'm like, okay, I like this Creative Mornings thing. But the third one was the moment that really changed things for me. And it was a woman by the name of Alexa Rose Carlin. She was the founder of the Women's Empower Expo, if any of you guys remember that. She was talking on the topic of language. And she wasn't really preaching about speaking the language of English, Hebrew, or Spanish. It was more if you speak the language of positivity, you're gonna portray positivity, and if you speak the language of negativity, obviously you'll probably be negative. But more so than that, she had a very interesting story. Unfortunately, had autoimmune disease, got sepsis, was in a coma, 1% chance of living, saw the light in the purple elephant, got out of that to become a noteworthy speaker, entrepreneur, author, founder of the Women in Power Expo. She was preaching to be genuine, be authentic, and pursue your passions. And that really just resonated with me. And she actually encouraged us to leave the talk and go out and record a video of ourselves with a goal or an idea or a passion project that we wanted to pursue. And at this time, this was in January 2016, I had recently just started blogging. And if you guys remember, back then, blogging was still like a relatively new thing. And to give you guys some context, I was at a training seminar and a woman kind of introduced me to this blogging thing. She goes, I'm getting paid to get stuff for free to write about things that I thought were interesting. It was very Rob Report-esque. There were like watches and shoes and really cool stuff. So kind of like put a little mental bookmark in my mind, this blogging thing could be something kind of cool. I was still living out west in suburbia Broward County, but I was finding myself taking more and more interest to coming to downtown Fort Lauderdale. And around this time, I was very fortunate to connect with some people that were into arts and culture, and one of them invited me to a music event. And all he said was, we're gonna go to this music show in a place called Wynwood to see this guy. This was in 2014. Never been to Wynwood. Wynwood, I'll get there. But the music event was 3 Points, and the guy was Chet Faker. And it was the second year of 3 Points. It was at MAP's backlot. It was very raw, very underground, before the level that they're at today, about to celebrate 10 years, God bless them. But it was the coolest thing. It was one of the coolest experiences I ever had in my life. I will never forget. There were so many amazing artists there, so much great vibes and great decor and so much art. And I'm like, wow, I really like this Wynwood thing. So now I'm starting to follow New Times and different websites and culture pages and stuff like that to try to find out more. Gets time for Art Basel season, and I'll never forget, I post on Facebook, and I was truly just a regular Johnny 9-to-5 recruiter, go to the sports bar, watch the Hurricanes and the Heat games with my friends, was not into art at all. And I posted, who wants to go to this Art Basel thing? Nobody responded. So I made the first of a series of choices in my life, which I'm very proud to share with you guys, that literally changed the course of my life, my community, potentially the art world and otherwise. I chose to get in the car and drive to Wynwood by myself. I pulled up to 25th Street and North Miami Avenue, and I was hooked. I didn't even need to go more than one block. There was live art, there was live music, there were guys doing murals live, there was an indoor skate ramp park, there was glass blowing, there was photography exhibits. It was the coolest thing. How many of you guys remember Wynwood 2014, right? I mean, still a great place. It's changed a little bit. But everything happens for a reason. So I'm hooked. I went to Kush for the first time. Had a Kush burger that night. I was really hooked. I really was like, wow, I really like this arts and culture thing. And I'm actually I'm gonna give a different version of the story here that not that many people know about. It was really the love that I was developing of house music at this time before I discovered a love for art. And house music is a form of art and culture. Unfortunately, my dear friend Juan here was a DJ and had a lot of experience within house music, had a depth of house music knowledge. And my first community building effort was wanting to build a house music scene in Fort Lauderdale, which thankfully my dear friend Joyce also supported. And we started having meetups at General Provision co-working space back in Fat Village, just bringing some like-minded individuals that liked house music as well that said, why should we always have to go to Miami to go for these events? We should be able to have these events here in Broward too. And fortunately, shortly thereafter, around that time, I moved in with two Honduran brothers by way of Memphis who were really into the house music and the arts and culture. And they turned me on to, David Lefty Diaz turns me on to Boiler Room, which is a really cool, eclectic pop-up music experience, especially back then, held in rooftops and flats and hidden places all throughout the world, where they would bring in world-class DJs for a really unique, brand new style POV live stream music experience. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. So I'm really, really loving this house music vibe and the community that was coming along with house music at that time. And that was really my first venture into community building. So some of David's friends, and they're from Memphis, they would say David doesn't choose 901 because David doesn't go back to Memphis, 901 being the area code for Memphis. So I said, what's this choose 901 thing? Started looking into it, spoke to one of the founders, and they told me it was a social movement and a recruiting tool started by the church to initially teach computer skills to people, because unfortunately Memphis, while it's a great place, has two of the 5 worst neighborhoods in the country, North and South Memphis, and they needed to recruit teachers, paramedics, and firefighters to want to live and work in Memphis. That social movement eventually got acquired by the city, and now it is literally a staple and a talking point in conversation and a huge impetus for the growth and revitalization of Memphis. So how many of you guys have ever heard of the World Championship Barbecue Festival during Memphis in May month-long celebration? Now you have. If you ever get a chance to go, it's worth it. I had always heard about it from David and my friends, and despite maybe some of the scary things I heard about Memphis, I decided to go. So I go and I see the impact of this Choose 901 thing firsthand. I'm blown away, come back, supercharged and inspired, and I had just moved into downtown Fort Lauderdale in the Camden building back in 2015. And at this time, I'm now discovering the arts and culture a little bit more. I'm going to the early stages of Flagler Village and the Fat Village Art Walk. And I'm discovering artist studios, I'm touring artist studios, I'm spending a lot more time with the artists and the arts and culture, going to the really early grassroots stages of the art walk when it was very humble beginnings, tens of people, 100 people, few people. I'm like, wow, this is cool. This is kind of like that Wynwood vibe that I was never passing an opportunity to go and explore. I would go to anything and everything that I could see in Wynwood. So before the art walk in June of 2015, I, with my cell phone and a hashtag, start Choose 954. And I really want to just take a moment to reiterate that. With my cell phone and a hashtag, I literally just posted, come to the art walk, here's the art walk. I grew up in Coral Springs, just 35 minutes away, and I felt, I'm going out, I'm going to a lot of events, I'm not seeing anybody I grew up with. If people knew about all these cool things that were going on in our community where we're from, it would give them a reason to choose the 954. So I thought, and it did. So, I kind of pivot the food blogging to now arts and culture blogging, because food is parts of arts and culture. And just to give you guys real quick context on the blogging side of things, how many of you guys remember like Foursquare? Yeah, like Vimeo from back in the day. You know, it was very early stages, but I saw like storytelling either through text or now at this point, like Facebook Live was becoming very popular. I felt it was very effective to show people better than I could tell them what was going on. So I kind of pivot. The blogging thing initially started with snow stops because my friends and family would tell me they like the place that snow stops at. I go by my last name, not a big fan of my first name. Sorry, Mom. But now I'm going through, I'm showing people all these cool things that are going on within the arts and culture. And long story short, fortunately, a woman that I met at my second Creative Mornings talk, who was a lawyer, professor at Broward College, had a very, very seasoned past, Natalie Budo. She meant to be here this morning, but she had something come up. She invited me to a TEDx simulcast event at the Tower Club atop the Regions Bank buildings. Anybody ever been there? It's a cool place, one of the greatest views of downtown Fort Lauderdale. So she was showing a TED Talk. She was doing a TEDx simulcast event. And she played Amanda Parker's TED Talk, one of the top 10 most watched TED Talks of all time, about being a street performer, giving her art and music away for free, and the power of asking. And the way the story goes, after the TED Talk, there was opportunity to network, and some old gray-haired guy to the right of me said, "What do you do?" And I told him, well, I just started this Choose 954 thing. I was just fading out of being a recruiter to get into entrepreneurville, and Choose 954 was really my first venture. And I really had no idea how to monetize it. I really had no idea what I was doing, but I was just winging it. And entrepreneurville meaning I was driving Uber or Lyft to make ends meet at that time, because I really wanted to give myself the flexibility and the freedom to go and see and do the things and explore the things that I wanted to go see and do. So while this old gray-haired guy to my right that was sitting next to me couldn't really care less about what I had to say, thankfully, it was a very sharply dressed Trinidadian brother with a Dali mustache and a Zara suit sitting to my left. And he said, "That sounds kind of interesting. Let's meet for coffee." And we started meeting for coffee at the Tower Club. And it was on the third, well, before we get to the third, the first meeting that we sat down, I was a recruiter, so I had interviewed thousands of people, thousands of times. And, you know, tell me about your work history, tell me about your life story, how did you get to this point, so on and so forth. My work history was, you know, very short. I kind of told you I was in sales, I did a little recruiting, whatever, I played a little poker. Well, this gentleman, he had come here from Trinidad, went to art school in Miami, worked for some of the largest advertising agencies, was an artist at heart, but told me he liked nice things, so he couldn't be a full-time artist. So he got into advertising, taught art in correctional facilities, Turner Guilford Prison, and had been involved with a lot of early stages activism within Broward County, within the art scene, helped start Artist and Entrepreneur program, was involved with the Vision 2020, was one of the first tenants in Fat Village, actually had the space before CNI Studios, that was his agency called the Collide Factory, and he built the roll down door that everybody attributed to being CNI Studio space. That's another story for another day. But he essentially had wealth of experience and knowledge, but unfortunately, he didn't have a business partner, so he got burnt out and went back to corporate and became a marketing executive with the Westfield Corporation, one of the largest mall companies in the world. Couldn't blame him at that time. But fortunately, when we connected, he was starting to kind of step back out into the art scene and looking to potentially get out of corporate. And he saw something in me that, you know, I didn't see in myself. And on this third meeting, we were just talking about ideas. I had never really done an event before. All we really had done was pool parties at my building and with DJs and house music. And just kind of threw it out there. I said, you know, want to do a big event? Want to do a Basel and Broward? How many of you guys know what Art Basel is? Right? You know, all these art fairs in the world are done in tents, convention centers, or hotels, big white walls and mazes. We never had that in Fort Lauderdale. So fortunately, my future soon-to-be business partner was a Swiss Army knife of skills, and obviously had agency experience. He's logo, branding, website, PR, so many skills, and one of the most intellectual, creative geniuses that I've ever met, that also was very altruistic in terms of wanting to do good because it was the right thing to do without having your hand out and asking for anything in return. So we said, what are these unique elements that we have in Fort Lauderdale that are different than Miami or any place else in the world? We have beautiful homes, we have a beautiful Los Olos waterway system, and a water taxi that we could transport people on. So instead of doing what everybody else does, doing an art fair inside of tents, convention centers, or hotels, why don't we do the first art fair in the world done inside of luxury waterfront homes that are for sale and make it only accessible via boat? And our first real venture, while we were starting to grow Choose 954 simultaneously as a marketing tool, was Art Fort Lauderdale, the art fair on the water. And I know she doesn't like to remember this or hear this, but fortunately, well, you would think you come up with an idea like this to literally revolutionize the art fair world, revolutionize the art world. You would think the city would want to get involved, the county would want to get involved, the business community would want to get involved. Well, you know, if we would have waited around for a check from one of those organizations, we might still be waiting. So fortunately, my business partner, God bless him, was in a position to open his piggy bank and self-fund the art fair to the tune of about $50,000. That to this day, I've never met anybody else that would have done that. And fortunately, he had the vision and the foresight that he knew if we would build it, that they would come. And my dear friend Joyce said, you know, the first year, all you have to do is have it run. And it ran, and it ran for 4 years up until COVID. We set out, our goal and our mission initially was to put Fort Lauderdale on the art world map as an international destination to view and interact with art. And as evident by us getting in Forbes, CNN Travel, Architecture Digest, NPR, PBS, Art Loft, we succeeded in that mission. We temporarily paused it with COVID, understandably. But this was really now our first venture, and I made a phenomenal choice, fortunately, to choose a business partner and choose a venture. And this venture paved the way for something that takes up the majority of our time now. How many of you guys are familiar with zero empty spaces? Yeah. So, you know, we're doing art inside of luxury waterfront homes that are for sale. And then we get involved with the real estate board. And then a lot of commercial real estate developers, brokers, property managers, and other people would say, hey, can you do art in our commercial space? And as the way the story goes, oh yeah, by the way, we're not going to pay you for it. And a lot of people would try to, you know, take advantage of us, and I've gotten past that, and I'm not here to talk about that. But you know, we had a lot of relationships that we were establishing with artists at that time, and they were all saying, hey, where are studios at, little and affordable? And at this time, the news article had actually just come out that Broward County was one of the least affordable counties for housing. And we left a business meeting one day, we saw all these for lease signs, and we said to ourselves, what if we can make this one of the most affordable places for artists to create in and pursue their passion? So Andrew had shopping center and retail development experience, having been a marketing executive for Westfield Corporation. He had taken underutilized portions of the mall, like the food court, and created commission-free art galleries, and had done a lot of things, and knew how to talk the lingo of developers and property managers and brokers and so on and so forth. So we turned to a friend of the program, Mayor Dean Trantellis, the mayor of Fort Lauderdale. We said, hey, we want to do this. He's a supporter of the arts. And he said, why don't you talk to Mike Weymouth, the owner of Los Olos Company? We always heard Mike Weymouth was a very tough cookie, gave us a meeting, energy in the space, gave him the landlord's number, signed a permanent lease. The program was you know, proven. The model was proven. We've since gone on to open 28 spaces over the last 4 years, now in 3 states, Richmond, Virginia, and Natick, Massachusetts, outside of Boston. We've had 400 artists come through the program. We've changed hundreds of artists' lives, thousands of times over. I never would have imagined when I set out with my cell phone to show people artists and artist studios and art and the power of art, that it would lead to us taking over a former Burberry store and making the first art studio in the world next to a Louis Vuitton, where somebody is walking out of a store spending thousands of dollars and says, oh, what's this art studio? So I say that to say this, that anything's possible. If I could do it, you guys can do it. And I know my friends would want me to mention another passion project which will make way to the mindfulness, and I promise you I won't keep you here forever, and this is a good part of the story. So I have a lot of artists that come to me and say, hey, I want to do a project. We really just don't have the time to manage artists. We provide as much support and advocacy as we can. But these artists came to me and they said, hey, we got this idea. We want to put sculptures on top of rocks and put them in the ocean and make artificial reefs. I'm like, I have no idea what the fuck that means. So they showed me, and I'm not a diver, I'm not a marine biologist. I grew up in South Florida, but I'm not in the ocean. They showed me a documentary on Netflix called Chasing Coral. Has anybody seen that? That's your homework. Go home and watch that. Yeah. The guys that made Seaspiracy made this. Seaspiracy received a lot of fanfare, but this deservedly so as well. And they really keyed me and made me aware of the issues that are plaguing and affecting our coral reefs. The corals are the first line of defense against, they help break down the wave energy to prevent storm surges. Corals provide habitat for thousands and millions of fish. They provide valuable ecotourism benefits to our local economy. It's literally the gift that keeps on giving, but because they're out of sight, out of mind for so many people, unfortunately, they don't have a voice. And I kind of felt, as I'm going through my advocacy mission, as I'm being called to my purpose and my why, and as I'm learning to make some valuable choices, I chose to take this project on because all the artists wanted to do was make the art. We fortunately found a very resourceful, generous, kind, caring, considerate reef builder that all he wanted to do was make the reefs. Somebody had to do the nonprofit, somebody had to do the press, somebody had to do the legwork, and fortunately, we've now put 100 of these artificial reefs in the ocean off the coast of Southeast Florida. We just recently put this site out here in Hollywood with support from the city of Hollywood. The other 80 are in Palm Beach, just south of Blue Heron Bridge. So, needless to say, I'm going through this mission. I'm doing a lot of work. We created 4 companies, 2 nonprofits, and I was experiencing burnout. How many of you guys have experienced burnout? Yeah, it's a real thing. And then comes the pandemic. And, I was a big fan of motivation. I was a big fan of TED Talks, but I think myself and everybody, obviously, we need a little more. Everybody kind of went into COVID like, not everybody, a lot of people said, I want to come out of COVID a better version of myself than I came into it. And I said that as well. And I bought some workout bands and I thought I would do them in my apartment. And that just wasn't for me. But you can use them. No, I'll borrow yours, sorry. So we take a trip. We take a trip to Tulum with the nonprofit to work on some reef projects in Tulum. And I'll never forget flying the drone, getting sunrise time lapses with my GoPro, and kind of at the state park on the north end of the beach in Tulum. We kind of wrap up everything, and my partner in the nonprofit, Shelby Thomas, said, I want to go explore these, lighthouse ruins, which I had already gone and seen. It's about a 10-minute walk each way, and then a couple of minutes to go explore. She had brought a friend, and she's 10 years younger than I am, so a young friend, recent college graduate, and he was on the trip with us, never met him before, and we're sitting there on the beach in Tulum, and he says the words to me that truly changed the course of my life. He goes, "You want to do some yoga?" And I said, "Sure." And I had made a couple of attempts at yoga. I had tried like once or twice, but just wasn't really for me. I was an athlete growing up. I did cardio and I liked calisthenics and stuff like that. It just really wasn't for me. But he wasn't a teacher. He just was a practitioner. And we just did a couple down dogs, a couple sun salutations, and I was hooked. And fortunately, I had just moved into a beautiful brand new building in downtown Fort Lauderdale called Society Las Olas. And they had an amazing 25th floor green space with a 180-degree view of all of Broward County, really. And there was free yoga offerings that were being offered in this community, in this building. And somehow the universe decided to drop in this beautiful soul, Chloe Ravel, aka the Gemini Rising, to provide free offerings on this beautiful green space. And I had known Chloe from before, from some work that we had done in Mass District, one of the arts districts in Flagler Village in Fort Lauderdale. And I knew that she was offering the yoga. And I had just took an interest in some girl that also had moved in the building, dropped Chloe a note. I said, "Hey, can you put in a good word with this girl?" Chloe says, "Come to yoga." And long story short, the girl evaporated, the yoga stuck. It started with one class that I knew about, and then I found out thankfully the building paid her to make a second offering available. Then I found out she was offering sound bowls. Has any of you guys ever done sound bowls? Yeah, that's the good stuff. And I was hooked, and we started spending a lot more time together through yoga, before and after class. I engaged Chloe in coaching to help me develop some much needed rituals, practices, habits. She, God bless her, introduced me to the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I now am very proud to say I start my day, brief moment of gratitude. As soon as I wake up, I immediately turn on affirmations. I am healthy, I am whole, I am human, just kind of reprogramming your mind subconsciously. I then transition to motivational talks as I eat my breakfast and take my vitamins and supplements, which is very important to me. And then I meditate and have my daily meditation practice, 5-10 minutes, whatever I have. Then I do daily morning flow, 10-15 minutes. Fortunately, the building I live in now has a sauna. I do it in the sauna for some extra heat because it's part of my self-care and my routine and helps me get going for the day. And then I take a nice cold shower, and that really sets the tone for my day and has really allowed me to level up. And if you aren't feeling your best, then you can't be your best and you can't do your best for the community or that you serve or the work that you do. So I'm forever grateful for Chloe for helping instill these practices in me. Still work with Chloe. We're so grateful that about to leave tomorrow to go to Europe with my parents for a family trip to Italy, and then after that, I'm gonna go on one of Chloe's Rise in Nature retreats to Serafos, Greece, with my dear friend Juan here as well, God bless him. And it's kind of cool how all of this is finally coming full picture, but I wanna wrap up just by saying, none of this was possible without, stepping outside of my comfort zone, making a few critical choices in life. I wasn't able to get to all of them here today, and over the last 2 years, thanks in large part to support from my book writing accountability partner, Ernesto Mandowski, former speaker here, I am now preparing to release my first book. Thank you. And it's not just my story, I highlight 7 key learning lessons that I learned along the way: learning to choose art, learning to choose house music, learning to choose community building, learning to choose a business partner, learning to choose a venture, learning to choose yoga, and last one that I'll mention briefly, learning to choose men's work, thanks to my dear friend, Dr. Seth Gilson, the Mindful Doctor. And I have some of my brothers I have all my brothers from my men's group here. And I'm super grateful that from the work that I did in the community and the inspiration I gathered from the work that I started doing with Chloe to become a yogi, that I was in a position when the opportunity presented itself to connect with Seth, who had already been doing men's work virtually online in the COVID era, but wanted to have it in person because it's obviously that much more impactful. And with our dear friend and brother Robert here, started a local chapter of a conscious men's circle called Arc of Brotherhood, and we meet weekly. And it's, you know, part therapy, part community building, you know, part family. Some of the most beautiful experiences, exercises. It's helped me transform as a man. It's helped me tell other men that are not my family that I love them. And it's one of the most pivotal and valuable components of my life, my self-care routine, all the above. So I'm forever grateful for these men here as well. And in closing, I'm forever grateful for all of you guys. There's so many people here. Kerry Baker took a liking to me when I tried to recruit him when I was still a recruiter and gave me pro bono coaching when I was transitioning out of recruiting. All of you guys for showing up, being supportive along the way. I mean, this, as you guys can see, this is my oxygen. This is my why. This is why I was put here on this planet at this time, to do this work, to move the needle forward, to make this a better place to live and not just a better place to vacation. I'm not here to talk about the cultural wasteland, stigma, and all the things that are holding us back. We're committed to moving things forward. And because I can tell you, it's not easy, and it's not supposed to be easy. It's never going to be easy. There are no handouts. I do not have a rich uncle. We have no philanthropist. We have no funder. The Reefs are a nonprofit, and we do get grants for the Reefs. Zero Empty Spaces, Art Fort Lauderdale, Choose 954, Fort Lauderdale Art and Design Week, all self-funded initiatives. It is me and Andrew, and literally just the two of us with support from his wife and baby, that literally pour our heart and our soul into this work, into the community, into supporting artists and creatives. And that is our oxygen. And that is the fuel that keeps me going. Because I've seen the power of art being able to transform places like Wynwood, or Soho, or Asheville, or Nashville, or Austin. You think about all these places I just mentioned. Are you going there for Starbucks? No, you're going there for the well-cultured community, to support the local cool coffee shops, and the music venues, and the comedy venues, and the art walks, and the pop-ups, and all those things that make those communities unique and great. And we have unique elements here in Broward County that make our community great. I just wanted to kind of bring that all together, initially with Choose 954, and now with some of the other ventures that we've created and platforms that we've provided to highlight and showcase artists and creatives in the community. I'm super grateful to do all the work that we do between hosting this CreativeZen monthly breakfast lecture series to connect, engage, and inspire the creative community one Friday morning a month, celebrating our 5-year anniversary today. Artist potlucks, we're very excited to be bringing back Accent Club, our goal-setting mini mastermind accountability group that'll be relaunching in August. So if any of this resonated with you, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you. And I'm truly just here to be a reminder for you guys that if you are genuine, if you're authentic, if you pursue your passion, if you discover your why, you can make some choices. Maybe outside of your comfort zone. Maybe they're not the traditional choices. Maybe it's not what the book says to do. But what book is that anyways? You can write your own book and your own path and pave your own way. Yeah. So I appreciate you guys being here. You can feel free. The book's gonna release in July, and you could do a little pre-order, save the date and whatnot. Glad to share this story with anybody, and I will turn it over to Q&A. Appreciate that. Excited to roll out the book. I'm not doing this book to, try to make a ton of money or sell a bunch of books. I truly want this book to be able to change one person's life. Your kid, your friend's kid, some kid that you mentor, whoever that may be. So I'm going to do a little book tour and try to speak a little bit more and spread the motivation and positivity. We are still growing Zero Empty Spaces. We had a very promising, very exciting meeting with a developer yesterday for a very promising future space in Fort Lauderdale at a very good location that we're very excited about. And, going to keep doing that. We'd like to bring back the art fair one year, but in all reality, without a funder, without sponsors, without support from, the CVB and the people that should support these things, we can't take the risk to self-fund, 6-7-figure productions that if it rains and nobody shows up, we're left holding the bag. So we're not going to bring back the art fair yet. We hope to one day in the future. We still do Fort Lauderdale Art and Design Week. But I'm just glad to continue doing this, spreading the positivity, spreading the vibes, continue creating platforms to support artists and creatives. And now that I've become a little bit more of a mindfulness advocate and also a psilocybin advocate, I want to share more of the resources that have had a profound impact on my life, part of my self-care routines, to help others as well. Thank you. Appreciate that. And Carrie was actually our first speaker at CreativeZen, and Quick gave one of the most memorable talks, noteworthy spoken word poet, so I encourage you to check his talk out later. We're approachable. Anybody can email us. If you have an event, tag Choose954 on Instagram, on your stories, on your posts. We'll repost it and share. For people, we work with cities and some governments that have marketing budget to extend the reach of their initiative. And with Choose954, we built up a 20,000 person email database that we use to send out bi-weekly newsletters with culture roundups of the top things to do, which we curate and control. So we could decide to put it in the newsletter, we could put it on social, but we're approachable. So if you got an event, reach out. Glad to support free events, anything, we pride ourselves on being inclusive. Email, social media, all those great things. Glad to have you. Everyone is welcome. Everyone is creative. We truly mean that. I will be respectful of your time. I do want to get one group photo of everybody.